Title: Shadows in the Frost. Introduction. In the desolate expanse of Alaska, where the sun barely kissed the horizon during the winter months, whispers of terror echoed through the small town of Frostfall. Reports of mysterious disappearances and gruesome attacks had sent shivers down the spines of the locals. They spoke in hushed tones of a creature from folklore, the Wendigo. It was said to be a spirit of insatiable hunger, a harbinger of death that prowled the icy wilderness. To confront this growing menace, the government dispatched 2 agents, David Mercer and Julie Hartman. The arrival. David, a seasoned investigator with a penchant for the supernatural, stepped off the small plane, his breath visible in the frigid air. Beside him, Julie, a sharp-witted analyst with a background in anthropology, adjusted her scarf, her eyes scanning the snow-covered landscape. The town was eerily quiet, the only sound being the crunch of their boots on the frostbitten ground. "Do you really think it's a Wendigo?" Julie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David shrugged, his expression serious. "The locals believe it is. We need to gather evidence before we dismiss their fears." The investigation. As they made their way to the town hall, they were greeted by the town sheriff, a grizzled man named Hank Laramie. His face was lined with worry, and his eyes darted nervously. "Glad you're here," Hank said, his voice gravelly. "We've lost 3 people in the last month. All of them were last seen near the old logging road. Folks are scared to leave their homes." David nodded, taking notes. "What do you know about the Wendigo?" Hank shuddered. "It's a legend, but legends have a way of becoming real in places like this. It's said to be a spirit that possesses those who are consumed by greed or hunger. It drives them to madness, turning them into something monstrous." Julie exchanged a glance with David, her skepticism wavering. "We need to investigate the logging road." Into the woods. As dusk fell, the agents set out toward the logging road, armed with flashlights and a sense of foreboding. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches heavy with snow. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of wildlife. "Do you hear that?" Julie whispered, her heart racing. David paused, straining to listen. A low, mournful howl echoed through the trees, sending chills down their spines. "We should keep moving," he urged, his instincts on high alert. They pressed on, the darkness enveloping them like a shroud. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, echoing through the woods. Without thinking, they sprinted toward the sound. The encounter. They stumbled upon a clearing, where a flickering fire illuminated a horrific scene. A man, wild-eyed and gaunt, was crouched over a pile of bones, gnawing at the remnants of what appeared to be a deer. His skin was stretched tight over his bones, and his eyes glowed with a feral hunger. "Stop!" David shouted, raising his flashlight. The man turned, revealing a twisted grin that sent waves of terror through Julie. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed, his voice a guttural growl. "The Wendigo is hungry, and it wants you." Before they could react, the man lunged at them, but David tackled him to the ground. In the struggle, the man's eyes flickered, revealing a moment of clarity. "Help me," he cried, his voice breaking. "I can't control it." Julie, heart pounding, grabbed a nearby branch and swung it at the man, knocking him unconscious. "What do we do now?" she gasped, panting. The revelation. As they caught their breath, the ground beneath them trembled, and a chilling wind swept through the clearing. Shadows danced around them, and a low growl resonated from the depths of the forest. The Wendigo was near. We need to get him back to town, David said, urgency in his voice. He might be the key to stopping this. They hoisted the man between them and hurried back, the howls of the Wendigo echoing behind them, growing closer with each step. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to reach for them, hungry and relentless. The confrontation. Back in Frostville, they barricaded themselves in the sheriff's office, the man still unconscious on the floor. Hank stood guard, his face pale with fear. What if it comes for him? He asked, glancing nervously at the windows. We need to find a way to exorcise the spirit, Julie said, her mind racing. If we can bring him back to his senses, maybe we can stop the Wendigo. As they worked, the howling outside intensified, and the temperature plummeted. Suddenly, the man stirred, his eyes snapping open, filled with terror. It's coming, he screamed, his voice laced with panic. The final stand. Just then, the door burst open, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a towering, emaciated creature with hollow eyes and elongated limbs. The Wendigo had come for its prey. Stay back, David shouted, brandishing a makeshift weapon. The creature let out a bone-chilling roar, its breath visible in the frigid air. In a moment of desperation, Julie grabbed a vial of salt from her bag, a trick she had learned from folklore. We need to create a barrier, she yelled, pouring the salt in a circle around them. The Wendigo hesitated, its form flickering as it approached the barrier. The man, now fully aware, stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to let it take me, he cried. With a final, anguished roar, the Wendigo lunged, but the salt barrier held. The creature writhed and twisted, its form dissipating into the night, leaving only an echo of its haunting howl. Conclusion. As dawn broke over Frostville, the agents stood outside, the air still and cold. The man, now free from the Wendigo's grasp, thanked them profusely, his eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. We need to warn the others, David said, glancing at Julie. This isn't over. The Wendigo may be gone, but its legend will linger. Julie nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of what they had witnessed. We'll make sure the town knows the truth. And we'll be ready if it ever returns. As they drove away from Frostville, the shadows of the trees loomed behind them, a reminder that some legends are born from darkness, and the hunger of the Wendigo would always be a part of the Alaskan wilderness.